Hey everyone, welcome back to DC Explore. Today, we're going to talk about a dark chapter in American history, one that's often glossed over in textbooks, but holds incredibly important lessons for us today. We're going to explore the story of the Japanese-American internment during World War II. Picture this. It's December 7th, 1941. A surprise attack on Pearl Harbor happens, and suddenly, the United States is thrust into a global conflict. Fear, anger, and suspicion grip the nation. And on the West Coast, this fear took a specific and devastating target: anyone of Japanese descent. Overnight, lives were turned upside down. It didn't matter if you were a first-generation immigrant, an Issei who had come to America for a better life, or if you were a Nisei, a second-generation American, born and raised on U.S. soil, a citizen by birthright. Your loyalty was questioned simply because of your heritage. Fueled by decades of anti-Asian sentiment and war hysteria, a narrative of paranoia began to spread. Newspapers ran headlines calling Japanese Americans a fifth column, an internal threat waiting to strike. Politicians, military leaders, and public figures fanned the flames of suspicion, despite a complete lack of evidence of any widespread espionage or sabotage. Think about it. Many of these families were farmers, shopkeepers, fishermen, doctors. They were your neighbors. Their kids went to American schools, pledged allegiance to the flag, and dreamed American dreams. But none of that seemed to matter. Then, on February 19, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. This order gave the military the authority to designate military areas and to exclude any and all persons from them. While the language was neutral, its target was clear. The entire West Coast was soon declared a military area, and the forced removal of over 120,000 men, women, and children of Japanese ancestry began. Imagine getting a notice on a telephone pole or in a newspaper. You have 1 week, maybe less, to get your affairs in order. You have to sell your home, your business, your farm, everything you've worked your entire life for. And you can't sell it for what it's worth. People know you're desperate, so they offer you pennies on the dollar. You have to abandon possessions, heirlooms, pets. You're told you can only bring what you can carry. Families were first gathered at temporary assembly centers, often at racetracks or fairgrounds, where they were forced to live in horse stalls, padru still smelling of animals. The conditions were shocking. From there, they were loaded onto trains with blacked-out windows and sent centos of thousands of miles inland to one of 10 relocation centers, which were, for all intents and purposes, concentration camps. These camps were hastily built in some of the most desolate and remote parts of the country places like Manzanar in the California desert, Heart Mountain in Wyoming, or Rower in the swamps of Arkansas. Families were crammed into single rooms in drafty, tar paper-covered barracks. They were surrounded by barbed wire fences and armed guards in watchtowers. Privacy was non-existent. They had to line up for a mess hall, for latrines, for every basic necessity. Life in the camps was a daily struggle for dignity. The internees, resilient and determined, tried to create a sense of normalcy. They established schools, churches, and newspapers. They planted gardens in the harsh soil, organized sports leagues, and held dances. They tried to maintain their cultural traditions and create a community in the face of dehumanizing conditions. But the psychological toll was immense. Families were fractured. The authority of the Issei parents was undermined as their children, the English-speaking Nisei often had to act as family representatives. People lost their livelihoods, their sense of self-worth, and their faith in the country they called home. And here's one of the most painful ironies of this entire story. While their families were imprisoned behind barbed wire, thousands of young Nisei men volunteered to fight for the United States. They served in the 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. These units fought with incredible bravery in Europe and became the most decorated unit of their size in U.S. military history. They were fighting for the very freedom that had been denied to their parents, their siblings, their friends. They were proving their loyalty on the battlefield, while there were, of course, those who resisted. Some, like Fred Korematsu, Gordon Hirabayashi, and Nitsuai Endo, challenged the legality of the exclusion and internment orders all the way to the Supreme Court. While the court tragically upheld the government's actions during the war, citing military necessity, their cases laid the groundwork for future day reckonings. These individuals were vilified at the time, but today we recognize them as heroes who stood up for American civil liberties. The last internment camp didn't close until March 1946, months after the war had ended. The internees were released, given a train ticket, and just $25. They were told to go home, but for many, there was no home to return to. Their properties were gone, their communities dismantled. They faced lingering prejudice and had to rebuild their lives from scratch, often in silence, carrying the trauma of their experience for decades. For many years, this chapter of American history was a secret. Survivors were often reluctant to speak about the shame and pain they endured. It wasn't until the civil rights movement of the 1960s and 70s that a younger generation of Japanese Americans, the Sansei, or third generation, began to demand answers and justice. This activism led to the formation of the Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians. After extensive hearings and research, the Commission concluded in 1982 that the internment was not a military necessity. It was a grave injustice fueled by race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. Finally, in 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act. The act provided a formal apology from the U.S. government and a symbolic payment of $20,000 to each surviving internee. It was a landmark moment, an acknowledgement of a profound wrong. So, why is it so important that we remember this story today? Because it's a powerful, cautionary tale. It shows what can happen when fear and prejudice are allowed to override civil rights and the rule of law. It reminds us that citizenship and loyalty can be fragile concepts, and that we must remain vigilant in protecting the rights of all people, especially in times of crisis. The words of the internees, inscribed on a monument at the Manzanar camp, say it best: "May the injustices and humiliations suffered here as a result of hysteria, racism, and economic exploitation never be repeated." This history isn't just about Japanese Americans. It's about all of us. It's a core part of the American story, and understanding it helps us better understand our country and our responsibilities as citizens. Thank you so much for watching and for taking the time to learn about this important topic. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into history. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, take care.